So we are thrilled to be joined by today's guest, Simon Phillips, also known as the Change Man. He is the founder of the Changemaker community and the Changemaker group based in the UK, and he's on a mission to develop 1 million changemakers. That is a huge, huge number. And Simon is also a radio host and author of the Time of Your Life and Dynamic Time Management books. He recently partnered with us for our 2021 Become a Force for Good event that we ran, and we are so happy to be sitting down with him today. So welcome, Simon.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan. Good to see you. Hi, Charlotte.
Hey. So thank you so much for coming on today. I think it'll be great for our listeners if you'd like to just give us a little bit of a background on who it is you are, your journey, some pivotal moments, and why it is you're really doing what you do, just to kick us off.
Oh, fantastic. So this won't take any more than 3 hours, I promise. So my background was I started out with the organization formerly known as Anderson Consulting. They're now called Accenture. And I was part of a division that was groundbreaking at the time. We were talking about change management, which was new. Everybody knew how to put systems in and how to change processes and how to make their businesses efficient. But what they were tinkering with when I joined them was the notion that wouldn't it be good if we could bring some people with us when we're doing these things. So I was always working with the people side of business. And then I set up my own business in 2000 with the view to, I had a couple of web ideas, which was, obviously what was going on at the time. People were developing websites, and they were in the space of helping people helping people in their lives. So I've always had that focus of helping individuals. And so that sort of carried on for a while. I was working with corporates. I was working with individuals on a coaching basis. But the thing that really drove me was a desire to help others. And so that was the origins of the thinking behind the Changemaker group, the Changemakers community, which are really about enabling others to go out there and make a difference in the world. So we're sort of like the facilitators in the background, if you like. We're all doing things that, supporting our own charities and our own projects in the communities. But the thing that we're good at, if you like, is helping people develop the mindset and the creativity and the excitement about making a difference in the world. So that's why we've focused in on that. And that's sort of the origin story, if you like.
I love that so much, because there'll be a lot of people listening here as well that share that same passion, right? Because as you know, our thing is when we're healthy and well, we can be a force for good. And that a lot of people that are listening, they want to create change. They want to support change in their environments, in their families, in themselves. And it's so powerful that not only people like you exist, but the work that you do exist as well. Because without people like you facilitating this, it can become very hard and create a lot of obstacles for other people that when they're not really sure how to navigate that.
Definitely. And also, Simon, you mentioned, obviously, we mentioned change makers quite a bit already. So for anyone listening, what is a change maker? So what is your definition of a change maker? And the second part of that question is, how and why do you show up in the world to support and develop change makers?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think people know for themselves if they're a change maker. So, we have a definition. It's somebody with the skills and the mindset to go out there and make a difference. But I think sometimes it has to come back to you as an individual. Do you feel like a change maker? Because if that's how you feel, and that's sort of what directs your activity and the things that you decide that you want to do, then you are a change maker. The only difference between that person and someone like you guys is probably just some skills and some mindset development around, okay, what do I actually do on a day-to-day basis that's going to achieve the results that I'd love to see in the world? And so that's it really for me. It's like, not everybody wants to be a change maker. I mean, let's be honest here, because if they did, there would be no problems in the world. There wouldn't be a problem that we wouldn't all be working on and trying to solve. The reality is there are some people out there in the community that are totally selfish. I use that word on purpose because it has negative connotations. There are people out there who are purely out for themselves and self-interested, and they're not the people that I want to support. And I bumped into people like that in the corporate space, and that was what sort of set my mind buzzing of, do I really want to be doing this for the rest of my life, helping some people who actually they're only going to use this for their own good? Now, I know there's that thing about the oxygen mask on the plane, isn't it? You have to look after yourself first before you can help anybody else. So that's absolutely fine. But there are some people who would use the oxygen mask and then, they would be running for the door first. There are those people in society. They're not the people that I'm trying to help. I'm here. I believe I've been put on this planet, if you like, to use any skills that I've got to help others who want to go out there and do some good. So those are the change makers that I'm looking to support.
Awesome. I love that so much. I especially love what you mentioned about like change makers is like, you can feel it. If you've got this urge or this yearning to do something special that actually has a positive impact on somebody else, then you are it. You are a change maker already. And I think that's so powerful, because we always talk about like follow the feelings, right? Follow your feelings, follow your highest excitement, and where is that leading you? And more often than not, when people truly start to do that, the self-interest falls away. And I think that there's an element of self-interest for everybody in what they do, right? Because like you, like us, like we love the people we work with, right? They inspire us and motivate us every single day. So there's definitely some self-interest that present, but it's that extra impact that then it goes on to have. Like you, I was bumped into some of those personalities in the corporate fitness space, and it felt misaligned, right? And it just didn't feel quite right. So following those feelings has led us to what wellness theory is today. So thank you so much for sharing that, because there'll be people again listening, maybe in similar situations, feeling like they're surrounded by people that just aren't quite the right fit. Yeah.
And do you know what? It's not as if those people can never become people who want to be supportive in the community. I have a saying called, which is run with the runners. So in change management terms, when you're trying to make change happen in an environment, in an organization, in a community, it doesn't really matter, in your team, there will be some people who will be me first, let me help. What can I do? And those are the runners. They're the ones that we need to work with first and give them everything they need to go out there and make an impact. And then what will happen is they will get results. They will start to talk to people about that. There'll be an excitement, there'll be a buzz. And some of those people who are reluctant or maybe even anti what we're trying to do in the first place start to look at that and think, maybe this is something that I want to get involved in as well. And it's the old bell curve, the pioneers up front, and then the big jump of people that want to get involved. And maybe there'll still be one or two laggards at the end, but maybe they'll just become the dinosaurs and they'll become irrelevant in the biggest scheme of things. It's this big group that we're after, but we actually got to focus back here on the runners, the ones who actually want and need and demand our time because they really want to make a difference.
Absolutely, definitely. Like I say, it's those that placing that focus on those runners, that's going to help create that ripple effect. It's going to plant the seed to the non-runners, and eventually, hopefully, they become runners themselves as well. And that's it. It's just don't place all your energy on people who aren't ready to do that, to be change makers yet, and focus on people who are, who can have that ripple effect and plant those seeds in the people around them, to then hopefully one day soon they step up and go, oh, actually, I like what's happening here. I want to get involved. I now want to be selfish to be selfless. I want to work on myself so I can then help others and make a bigger impact. So I think it's definitely important in placing your focus in the right place, even if it's on a small group, because that will have a big ripple effect.
Yeah. And for me, what I've learned over the years is what's my job and what's not my job. So there's an element of prioritization going on, because there's only me, unless I develop a team and a group of other people that want to get involved as well. But in terms of utilizing my time and what I can do, there are some people that are not my job. Maybe there's somebody else's job in the future, if you like. But right now, my job is to work with those that really want to go out there and make a difference.
We always talk about you focusing on your highest return on investment activities, right? When it comes to wellness and their own well-being, and the reality is that investment isn't just financial, right? It's the time, it's the energy, it's all of those things. And it's interesting because obviously what I'd love to kind of start picking your brains about now is time itself, because you've written two books in and around time. Time is something obviously that you're very passionate about, for you to be focusing your time on it to help others as well. And it's something that we've noticed our clients, our prospective clients, the people in our community, they're often struggling with time, and time is actually becomes a big stressor. There's not enough hours in the day, or they don't feel like they're being proactive enough or productive enough. They don't achieve what it is they really wanted to achieve, and they end up beating themselves up about it. And then that ends up in this vicious loop and this cycle of then more struggle, more lack of productivity. Then time is almost like the enemy. And it's like, well, if there was more time, then I would do X, Y, Z. And it always can become an excuse. So I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts on that and any practical tips you might have that you want to share for our listeners today.
See, this is why I love talking to you two, because you say a few things and my brain goes bing, 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 bing. So I've got about half a dozen things I want to talk to you about now. So I'm going to have to think about, right, where shall I start? So where this whole thing started in terms of writing the books and developing some information for people was I sat down and thought about, what does a change maker need? So if they're going to go out there and make a difference and, do some good in the world, what do they actually need? Well, they need some skills. They need to know how to organize their time and to prioritize and to be efficient, but also be effective. They need to know how to build relationships and to develop networks and develop teams, because without, I think it was, what's that famous saying that said, never doubt what a small group of people can do. Margaret Mead, I think, said that. But the emphasis there is a small group or a group of people, because on our own, we can only ever do so much. Together, we can do a lot. And so yes, I've always been an avid networker. And so I've always built networks. So I've written a book about networking as well. And the next book's going to be all about how do you actually make change happen? There's a process. There's things that you fundamentally need to do. And if you miss some of those steps, you're probably not going to get the results you're after. So those three things, if you like, all come together as the skill set for a change maker. And the time when I've been writing about for a long time. So my first book on time management was 2003. And I've been at that time, I was talking about using Palm pilots. Now, you youngsters won't even remember them, or maybe you don't.
I remember them. I remember
them. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I remember one of them. So, I had one of them.
So for the young ones like me, what is that?
Do you want to tell her, Jonathan, or shall I?
Just like a little mini Palm computer with a diary and calendar and all that stuff. It's
like a BlackBerry.
Kind of. Its BlackBerry's a little bit more advanced than a Palm Pilot, but it's just keep everything organized on an electronic device. Okay.
I remember my parents having a Filofax.
Probably not a Palm Pilot, but digital version of a Filofax.
All right.
So there was a Filofax, and then there was the Palm Pilots, and then there was the Blackberries, and basically what I was writing about in 2003 was, do you know what? If you can do that with this thing that's in your pocket, and if it can be connected to the internet, surely you can do this, and this. And what's evolved, of course, is the smartphone, which now we all use. And so I've been writing about this stuff for a long time, because I fundamentally believe if you really want to make a difference, you're going to need to get organized. And you're going to need to, if you have a desire to go out there and help other people, you need to be fit. You need to be mentally agile. You need to be organized in a way that ensures that your day-to-day activities, you're getting as much done as possible to help those people that you're there to serve. So I think that's why I'm passionate about time management.
I love it. Brilliant. So on that point then, what kind of practical tips do you have for someone? And I know, you've written books on this, and you don't need to give everything away, but is there any practical tips for anyone listening that's thinking, yes, I need to be more organized. I need to learn how to almost manage myself a bit better so I can go and do all these things I want to do?
Yeah. So I think there are lots of books out there on time management. And they're all useful. There we are. That's a good start. That's a good plug for everybody who's written a time management book. There's lots of little tips and techniques and strategies and ideas. And I do, share a lot of those, and I do bundle those up into different ways for people to think about things. But I like to take it back a step and think strategically about time management. So people will not do things. They will not get organized. They'll not prioritize. They'll not put lists together. They won't think about what they're going to do for the day unless they're motivated. Yeah. So for me, I go back a step and ask the question, why? Now for change makers, that's easy. We want to make a difference. We want to go out there and help others. So if we can define that why and make it really clear, then that gives us the motivation to want to find out what are the best ways of doing things, what are the most efficient way of doing things. And so that's where we start. Then my best, probably the $1 million tip, if you like, when it comes to time management and is just start. When you start, you will have that energy to work out what the next step is for you, because I believe we actually all do time management in very different ways. There are some things that appeal to some people. My wife loves a list. She loves that sense of achievement of ticking things off as she goes. For me, I like a bundle of things around me and a whole host of ideas. And then I look at my calendar and go, oh, I missed that one. No, I don't tend to miss much, to be honest, but I do have what to some people might look haphazard ways of organizing myself. Yeah. But it's not haphazard at all for me. I'm very effective. I get things done. And if I say I'll do something, you can just guarantee that will be done, because that's the way I like to organize myself. But it would look horrendous to my wife. In fact,
that is Charlotte in a nutshell.
This is exactly John and I that you've just described. Yeah. So John's the guy that likes the structure of the list. Yeah. For me, it's like crazy scientists, like all these different ideas dotted around.
I'll give you a good example. When we first started planning out the Become a Force for Good events that we ran, I walked into the room and there was Charlotte on the floor with this massive piece of paper and all these Post-it notes and everywhere. And it was like, what is going on here? It was like stuff was everywhere. My brain couldn't take it in. It was going, there's no structure here. What's going on? And like to her, it was like organized chaos. To me, it was just chaos.
Yeah. And I love so much what you've said there, because whenever anybody comes to us or we hear people say that they need to focus on time management, if they can just do time management, their whole life is solved, right? And it's like, actually, you don't need time management. You need to just start to understand yourself better. You need to understand your state. You need to understand your energy. You need to understand what you're bringing to the show, right? Then you get to figure out what needs your time and attention. So I love so much that you're coming from that standpoint as well. Because like you said before we started, it's like, do we really need another time management book? Yes, we do. Yeah. It's coming from this angle.
Exactly. And in fact, I was writing a blog last week where I was asking that question, posing it up front. Do we really need another time management book? Which was my thought back last year when I was planning it. And it was like, well, do you know what? Some of the things I was talking about previously, when I was mentioning technology, when I was mentioning work-life balance, so that was the original concept. It was at the forefront of everybody's mind last year, wasn't it? During the lockdowns, during the real early stages of the pandemic, people were asking themselves the strategic questions that, from my perspective, in trying to help people work through the why, that is the strategic question, isn't it? Why am I doing any of this? Why am I organizing my life in ways that ensure that I get a load of things done by the end of the day, but I'm not actually taking any time to decide, are they the things that I want to do? Are they the things that really motivate me? And so it felt like the right time to bring forward some of these strategies. And one of them is the L4 framework, as I call it, which is live, love, learn, leave one legacy. We're not here to do everything. And this is why I said, there are some people that are not my job. There are people who are very much my job, and if I can help them, then I will. But my legacy, the one thing I want to do is create 1 million changemakers. And it sounds massive, but when you chunk that down, I mean, you guys, this podcast is going to go out and there's going to be, thousands and thousands of people that will hear about this stuff. And it's great because they can then tune into things that they want to do. And so I use the shopping trolley analogy. I don't know if you've heard of this, but, reading my book is a bit like the shopping trolley analogy. You go around the supermarket, you do not put everything into your basket. For John, it would be the book that allows him to do the checklist inside. And for you, Charlotte, it's going to be a random selection of things because, they just make you feel good today. And that's great. And that's exactly what we should be doing because we can't be anybody other than who we are. We can be better versions of ourselves tomorrow, but we don't want to be a copy of somebody else because then we're robbing the world of some unique stuff that, only we can bring to the world.
Oh, yes.
Oh, definitely. And I love your goal of you wanting to create over 1 million change makers. And like you said, when you break it down over daily, weekly, month, it's not a huge number. But what I want to ask you is, why do you think we need more change makers in the world right now?
Oh, crikey. Now that is a case of where do you want me to start? There are so many macro issues, and those translate into very local issues. So, you don't have to look far if you really have your eyes open to see things that just shouldn't be the case these days. There shouldn't be any hunger in the world. There shouldn't be anyone without water in the world. There shouldn't be anyone without access to education in the world. And there shouldn't be people who are lonely. If we bring it back to what everybody was doing, certainly around me in the UK during the lockdowns, they were coming out onto the streets once a week and applauding the efforts of the NHS. Well, why is that a 1 week in the middle of a pandemic type thing to do? We should be supporting the people who are helping us in society more. My mum lives 160 miles away, but she lives on her own. Now, she's not really lonely. I'm sure there are times when she's lonely, but there are people that she knows that don't have anybody, no connections. And that shouldn't be the case in a modern world. We've got a load of connectivity, digital connectivity, and we've got a lot of resources at our disposal where we should be thinking hard about everybody else in the world, not ourselves. And I think so that's why we need more change makers. We need change makers involved in every single one of those things that I've just mentioned. And we both, we all know that's just scratching the surface. There's a million and one things that could be better. And I think we just need more people who have that mindset of, do you know what? It's not someone else's problem. This is something I need to be getting involved in. So that sense of personal responsibility, I guess. We're all here to do something of benefit for others. And it's like, what is that thing? Find it and go out there and make it happen.
Yeah, nice. Beautifully said. There was something, I'm not sure who said it. You may know actually, Simon, but somebody once said, when asked, well, where do I start? He said, well, look at what breaks your heart the most. What's the thing that really, really gets you? That's the place to start looking, and that's the place to start taking action. And I just felt like goosebumps hearing that. And even when I think about it now, because it really does, when you pose that question to somebody that isn't sure, they come up with stuff, right? They suddenly have like this long list, and they're like, well, okay, maybe this could be my purpose. It's like, well, your body, your heart, your emotion is telling you that that's the case. Follow that feeling. And see,
and you sorry, Charlotte.
No, that's cool.
Oh yeah, and I was talking to a group yesterday of senior GPs, general practitioners who want to be more involved in the system. So not just looking after patients, but thinking about what difference they can make. And we were talking about the concept of don't wait for all the lights to be green. So when we're imagining a journey, so if I'm off to Wales to go and see mum, I don't wait sitting here thinking, right, all the lights are green on that 160-mile journey now, I'll set off. I just go. I set off with that intention of, I'd like to go and see my mum. And all along the way, I will bump into the odd red light I stop at those. Some of the orange ones, not always so often, but generally, I'm not an amber gambler, as they say here in the UK. But generally, we can't wait for all the lights to be green. We can't wait for everything to be perfect before we start. And therefore, we shouldn't be asking ourselves, is it achievable? Is it attainable? Can I really make a difference? What we should be asking ourselves is it worth my time and effort? And if we can answer that question with a positive, then that's the impetus to get started, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Listen, you said something earlier that I want to ask you about. I think this kind of might be alluded into the thing that you're working on next, but a lot of people obviously want change in their own lives, or they want change in the world, but they don't get started. Why do you think that's happening, and what can someone do to get started other than what you just said about connecting with the time and effort and the intention?
Yeah, some people get overwhelmed. So, I've shared in different groups at different times this goal of mine to support and develop a million change makers. And some people just go, you've got to be kidding. How are you going to do that? That's just a ridiculous, it's an overwhelming goal. And sometimes, especially change makers, we can look around the world and see so much that needs doing, and then get overwhelmed and not start. And so chunking it down, we see, well, there's only so many things I can personally do and I can contribute to. So what can I do first? So there's that process piece. All of these are just fears, to be honest. There's that, fear of the process is just too much to do. Or maybe there's a fear that by following our passions, following the things that move us, we might be ostracizing ourselves from our current community or the current people that we engage with. And we fear some sense of loss in that. But actually, really, the people who are your really good friends, they're going to be even more excited and potentially even enthused to go and help you with the things that you're doing if they're real friends. So you won't lose the real friends, and you'll probably gain a whole load of new friends as well in the process. So there's that as well that gets in the way. So I think there's a bunch of things like that we can just, if we just take some time to think about them, they're imagined things, they're anxieties about things that we fear might happen, but actually the circumstances may be completely different now. Now might be the perfect time to get started again. And when we start, we then call to arms, if you like, all of our own creativity to find a way through it. We're brilliant at that as human beings. We found our ways around the planet and into space and all sorts of things. So we're good when we get started at finding the way, but we'll never be tasking ourselves with that as a problem if we don't get started. So I think those are some of the key reasons.
I love that. Great questions for people to be thinking about.
Definitely, absolutely. And it's just so true, like you said, you just got to get started, and that's the hardest part for a lot of people. But when you do, you realize you just find the way. You find a way to make it work.
Momentum.
And yeah, exactly. You build a momentum, and it's like you start taking one step at a time, and then you start finding the way, finding your path, and you just go, okay, it's becoming to flow now. It's getting the flow, and it's starting to grow and grow and grow, and it's awesome. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, totally agree. It's just get started. Pick whatever you're passionate about and just take that first step, and then just trust in your ability to figure it out as you go.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be about achieving the original aim.
Yeah.
Because if you're going out there with good intent and you're making a difference on a day-to-day basis, then that's worth it.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by, is it worth your time and effort? Whether you achieve it or not, whether I achieve 1 million change makers or not is irrelevant. If every day I'm doing something to help the next change maker and the next change maker, they might be the ones that go out and impact 1 million change makers. So the job still gets done, doesn't it? It's just like we don't have to sit around just, like, as I say, waiting for all the lights to be green.
And that's where your legacy gets born into it, right? Is because, long after you leave this world, and we all do, there'll be somebody that you've touched There'll be somebody that you've made a difference for, and that they'll be repaying that forward, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously. It's happening, because that's the beauty of contagion, right, and human nature. So I think the more we can remember that, and just remember that being a change maker isn't always about going and changing the whole world and helping a million people. It could be about changing your own intimate circle, like your own group of family and friends, and and you're still having that incredible effect. And I just think that's so important for people to remember as well, because everything is significant when it comes to positive change and positive impact. So I think if anyone's listening, it's definitely something to remember.
And sometimes you just have to go out with faith, and faith not just in your own abilities, but faith in other people. So a lot of the most depressed people in the world, I'm not talking about clinical depression now, I'm just talking about people who are just generally on a day-to-day basis depressed. A lot of the issues they have are, at some point, their faith in other human beings has been fractured. Because if they really 100% believed in and had faith in the goodness of other people, they would have that desire to re-engage and to look for opportunities, and also take themselves out of themselves and start looking around as to who can they support. So I've worked with a lot of people that have history of depression, and they all say universally the thing that got them out was looking outside of themselves and looking at who out there could use a listening ear, and who can they demonstrate some empathy for, because they've sort of lived through some of those experiences. And I think that's where your point, Charlotte, about it's not about the big picture, sometimes it's about the micro picture and the person in front of you. So if I think back to your amazing event, Become a Force for Good, there were times in that where you felt like some of the phenomenal speakers that you got in, there were times when you felt that they were talking to you through the screen. And that's what's important, because what you then do with that information is entirely up to you. But each of those speakers were talking to all of the people that you brought together across the world. And then they were impacting individuals. They don't know which individuals, and they don't know how. They just had faith that if they were to communicate their message, and with the intention of trying to help and trying to serve, that would make an impact.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so relevant and so on point. And it's interesting, you mentioned something there about is when we can almost step outside of ourselves. It's something we speak about. It's kind of called the COC, we call it, which is where we are either we're consumed and we're in our own story, we're in our own challenges, we're in our own problem. We move into then, through our personal development journey, into what we call like the observation phase, where we actually then observe, right? We see, okay, well, what needs our help? What's this person doing? What's that person doing? What am I doing? And you even start to see your own behaviors and things coming out. And it's like, wow, okay. And from that place, you get to move into the creator space. Yeah. And that's where you get to then create these experiences. You get to create the legacy that you want to leave. And I think we have to go through that journey. I truly believe like that's part of the hero's journey, isn't it? And I think it's just so important for anybody listening again to just think about, okay, where are you on that journey? Are you observing? If you're listening to this podcast and you've made it this far, listening and watching, you're in observation mode. You're listening. You're paying attention. So it's not much of a leap now to just start creating and starting.
Yeah, I love that. I do reference an aspect of that in the book as well, which is about different personalities. And I work with a number of different tools, some that talk about your personality and how you like to communicate and your preferences in that space. And I also work with something else called the Changemaker profile, which is all about how do you make your biggest impact? How do you contribute to the changes around you? And there's something about your COC process when you get to the final C, the creativity bit, where some people, and I'm sure you've encountered this as well, there's a barrier when you use a word like creativity or innovation. They sort of think, well, I'm not a creative person, or I'm not an innovative person. And they're probably right, because the more they reinforce that by saying I'm not a creative person, of course, they're opting out of the opportunity to develop that skill. However, there are some skills around creativity and innovation which we can acquire, but there's a certain type of person called a game changer that can't switch off that creative mode. 3 o'clock in the morning, they're having ideas. And that's what's beautiful about teams, because if you bring that game changer alongside, say, a strategist or an implementer, they will turn those ideas, or the good ones anyway, into something that's tangible and realistic. And that's why, you know, all of this is about the people that we work with. It's, you know, dynamic time management. That's the bit that we can do in terms of personal responsibility. I can show up on time, I can make things happen, I can organize myself. But what it's also doing, and this is the bit which really opens up the opportunity for us as change makers, is it helps us think about, what's my contribution to this team? How can I make the biggest impact? I think that's what's really important as a change maker, that we understand that, so that we're not wasting our time also doing stuff that doesn't interest us and doesn't really excite us. Because the more we can bring 100% energy to something, the more impact we're going to have.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I don't know if you saw it, John and I look at each other and kind of giggle a bit there, like describing us, this whole podcast. You just reflecting back.
Oh, it is funny.
And again, like the waking up with all these ideas, and John is very much the one that kind of keeps me grounded in those ideas, and then we can actually execute them. If I was left to my own devices, then there'd be all lots of great ideas out there in the world. But the reality is I don't know how well they would be executed. I have to do a lot of personal development or find that network and team. That's why I think we complement each other so well. And I think that is also something that can stop people, is they think, well, they don't have the full package. Maybe they don't feel like they can do everything. So you don't have to.
Exactly.
Right? You just have to find the people that have got what it is you need. All right. And then you come together and then the magic happens.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I love that. I can see on your faces that dawn of realization. Oh, that's why.
Exactly. It's always interesting when you're hearing other people speak and you're just like, oh, hang on, you're talking about us. What's going on?
Yeah, we didn't know you knew us so well.
That's why it works.
Exactly. So I do want to be obviously conscious of time for our listeners. So before we start wrapping things up, I just want to ask you, is there anything else that you would love to add to this conversation, or anything you really feel that the listeners need to know before we finish up?
Ooh, well, apart from obviously coming back and listening to your podcast every week, that would be the best thing they can do. If they've got value out of today, I can only assume that they're going to get value out of listening every week, because and there's something about developing some routines and some habits in your life that just reinforce all the good stuff. So we can set goals, but actually, if we make the process of achieving that goal fun and exciting and engaging, we're more likely to commit to it on a day-to-day basis. And that's the reality. You know, it's not, I mean, you will have experienced this. I've experienced it, where you set a goal and then no sooner have you got started than there's a setback and there's something that's got in the way, or there's another priority that emerges from nowhere. It's like, oh, well, that's really important. And how do I now, reassess what I'm doing? And some things have to go on hold. And so, we're constantly evaluating everything that we're trying to do and juggle and achieve. But it's the process that's important, because if we're going to get up every day and be excited and motivated, we've got to enjoy the journey as well as the outcomes. And I think that's one of the things that I've found out sort of more recently, if you like, as opposed to something I knew when I was just starting out on this journey, is that the journey itself is really important, and it's not always about the end goal. So I think there's a concept in the book I called dynamic flow, and it emerged from the pandemic and the fact that people were now having to potentially, not everyone, but work from home, work in isolation. There was a lot of constraints on what they were able to do with their everyday life. And what dynamic flow talks about is, yes, there are some things that we can manage when it comes to our time and our energy. We can think about exercise, we can think about diet, we can think about mindset, we can think about, reading books and doing things and putting some of the tips and techniques together, if you like, to manage aspects of our time so that we're effective. But equally, there's a point about acceptance. So it's management and acceptance in that. Imagine a figure of 8, and a sort of infinite cycle, if you like. One's going one way, one's going the other. So there are things that we can manage, but there are things that we have no control over whatsoever. And the point about acceptance there is not that we need to accept things, without a fight. There are some things that we can influence and we can make a difference. And so that it's not that type of acceptance I'm talking about. It's the acceptance of there are some things that happen in life which we can have no influence over. And yet, if we get distracted or we get frustrated or we waste a whole load of energy on those things, where we're getting in the way of flow. So acceptance is not a passive thing. It's more of an understanding that there's a way that I can get through this and I can help other people get through it as well. And so that's what dynamic flow is all about.
I love that so much, like anchoring into the journey and surrendering to it as well. I think if you can do that, I think you're on the path to mastery when it comes to life, let alone change making. I love it. So Simon, where can obviously our listeners find you, but most importantly, where can they get hold of your book?
Oh, you can get hold of the book on Amazon. It's available on Kindle and paperback and all the rest of it, and all over the world now. So I was going to go a different route with publishing, but then I just thought, actually, let's make it simple. And Amazon are great at making it simple. So yes, it's available there. It's called Dynamic Time Management, and that should be available. In terms of other things, because I have this big goal, if you like, or a goal that from my perspective means that I don't know what will make the difference to whom. What I'm trying to set up at the moment, or have been now for the last few years, is an infrastructure of stuff so that wherever you like to be, hopefully you'll bump into some of the things I'm talking about. So on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, I'm Simon Phillips TCM. So that's nice and simple. TCM stands for the Change Man. And I'm the Change Man on Twitter. But you mentioned the radio show earlier. So on Leadership Development Radio, which is KLDR online, and my podcast, those things are called The Change Show. And you were my guest on the Change Show recently, which was fantastic. So thanks for popping in. And I did make a note that you were going to come back and tell me what you were up to in the new year. So I'm looking forward to getting you back in on that. So the concept is, I can be found in all those places, and the reason is, yes, I've got some things to share, but it also enables me to network and introduce people to great people like yourselves, because none of us can do this on our own. We need a network of people like you and like some of the great people that you had on your event to influence people that we can't reach personally. So that's the concept.
Amazing.
Nice.
Brilliant.
Sounds amazing, isn't it? Yeah, we'll put all those links. We'll put in the show notes. So anyone who's listening can just go there, click on it, and go straight to wherever you need to go. Nice and easy.
Brilliant.
Simon, I'm very grateful that you have created that little ecosystem of where people can find you, because I believe I found you on Facebook, right? And we connected in the lead up to the Become a Force for Good event. And I truly believe and we believe that this is the start of something really, really special. And I think we will go on to work together and help each other and collaborate in ways that are relevant and can really help you towards your goal of developing 1 million change makers, because I've got a funny feeling you've probably already developed 1 million, you just don't even know it. But hey, maybe we'll never know from that standpoint. But thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate your time and your effort and your support with us here at Wellness Theory as well. And we're very grateful for you.
No, I'm hugely grateful for the opportunity to share some of this stuff. And it's, as you were saying there, there's a serendipity going on in some of these conversations, and it's been a delight to meet you guys. And I just wish you all the best with everything that you're doing, because it's phenomenal. So I'm really excited to be just associated with it on the side, and hopefully, you know, if we can do some stuff in the future, that'd be fab.
Absolutely. Thank you.